Ladies and gentlemen, here we are. This, guys, is the official live podcast here on Transformation Greatness, along with the Small Business Network podcast. I am your host, Shawn White, and we are continuing the series on Domestic Violence Awareness Month. For everyone that has been past guests and even present, even future guests, I appreciate each and every single last one of you. And I am very, very super excited as far as for who my next guest is that's coming on the show. This is someone here, this brother here, man, I tell you, he has a powerful testimony. When I even created this domestic violence awareness series, he wanted to jump on it because he has a story. And also as well, I believe as far as based on how what his personality is, I believe it can definitely inspire someone and really help a lot of people. So before we go ahead and jump into this thing, I just want to get the pleasantries all out the way. If you catch us on the live, of course, put in hashtag live. Let us know where you're tuning in from, ladies and gentlemen. If you know me, if you've been following me for quite some time, you know I love the dialogue. I love the interaction. I love the engagement. I get energy off of it, right? And also my guests as well. So don't be shy to comment. And then, but of course, if you're catching this on a replay because you're handling business, you got other commitments, all good. But guess what? You're not out of the woods because if you catch this, put in hashtag replay, let us know where you're tuning in from. And also, if you get value from this as well. So, with no further ado, we got my fellow guest here. And like I said, this brother is very powerful. He is making like major, major moves in his story, man. Like, golly, when I heard his story, it just made me feel like, you know what? I don't have no excuses. I don't, I don't have not one iota of an excuse because this brother has overcome so much, man. He's a powerhouse speaker. He's a part of Powerful on Purpose. Some of the alumni. He's part of the Leadership Experience Tour with Shawn Fair and the crew. And like I said, this gentleman here, he's really going places, man. And with no further ado, I'm allowed for him to introduce himself and tell you all exactly who he is. So with no further ado, my main man here, my soul brother here, Mr. Mark Rodriguez. Welcome to the show, brother.
Well, thank you for having me, brother. It's an honor to be on here tonight and be able to talk on this very important subject. What's up, Dr. James?
Welcome
Good to see
for
you on
everybody
board.
listening.
All
Got,
right.
got James in the house. So, with no further ado, because I understand everybody's time is limited. So let's jump into this thing. So if you can just introduce yourself, tell the listener audience of who you are, a bit about yourself, and let's really dive into this, my man, because I know you got a lot to share.
Well, let's do this. My name is Mark Rodriguez, and I'm from Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I am known as the lung transplant stonemason. I'm the only stonemason in the history of the world to do stonemasonry after 2 double lung transplants. And the reason I'm on here tonight is that I have a very unique perspective on domestic violence. My first donor was a victim of domestic violence. And in 2013, after I got divorced and I moved on to another relationship sometime after that. And I didn't even realize that I was also a victim of domestic violence until I got into a different relationship. I just thought I was with a mentally unstable person. And this is a subject that not a lot of men touch on. As men, we're raised to be tough. We're raised to be solid as a rock.
Correct.
We're not supposed to cry. We're not supposed to talk about things like this. But one of the main reasons why I did start talking about it was because I heard a story about a man that was in a very abusive relationship, and he never talked about it. And then sometime after, he ended up taking his life.
Wow.
And I feel that as a man, you have to be able to talk about this stuff. You know, when they ask a man, "Are you all right?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm good." That man is not good sometimes. But we're not conditioned to talk about these things, and we need to change that. And the reason I want to change that is because I want to be able to help somebody now, as opposed to sitting at their funeral when there's nothing I could do about it. And so after I moved on, after my divorce, I was in another relationship, and I was cooking dinner one night with this person, this woman that I was in a relationship with, and she needed another pan. And so she went up in the cabinet to grab another pan. And I just seen at the corner of my eye a pan, like she was pulling the pan out, but it threw me back to something. It made me have a flashback.
Wow.
To the time I got cracked in the back of the head with an iron skillet.
Whoa.
I was in a relationship where I was with somebody who was very verbally, mentally, and physically abusive. Um, but I just, like I said, I kind of took that all the way and just stayed tough.
Yeah.
Like men were supposed to be.
Right. Right.
But I had no idea that what I was doing for my daughter. You know, I was unconsciously showing her that not only did my ex not see my value and worth, but I wasn't even, I didn't even have that in my sights anymore.
Wow.
And if you listen to a person tell you you're a piece of this or something like that, too often, you start believing it.
Yeah.
And you start feeling that way. And there was many instances. I remember got cracked over the nose with one of those old school plastic phones, those hard plastic phones that plug into the wall. The ones that stay in the house.
Yeah.
And there was many other instances that where I'd catch a cheap shot out of nowhere, and I never, I didn't really think anything of it because she was a smaller woman and it didn't really hurt.
Right.
But then when she started using other objects to inflict pain, then that turned to be a different story. And I realized when this woman took this pan out of the cabinet, I jumped back like I was about to get struck in the head again.
Right.
And I kind of got in this defensive position. And I said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "I'm just getting another pan. We need another pan." And I said, "You were going to hit me, weren't you?" And she was like so freaked out, so shocked. And then I just kind of stepped back and I stepped away from the stove and I kind of walked outside and I took a breather, and I realized that's when I realized like I need some help. You know, I got some fixing to do.
Right.
I got some healing to do.
Some trauma.
And so, if it wasn't for my daughter, I may not even have got a divorce when I did, because, along the way of my marriage, many people said, "Man, you need to get a divorce, dude. This isn't any good for you." But when my daughter said that, it hit my ears a lot differently. And that's when I made a move to do something about it. And it was an ugly divorce, and there was court hearings, and there was restraining orders filed on false pretenses and false reports of me violating this or that, the other. And it was surrounded by a whole bunch of lies. But ultimately, the judge gave me custody of my daughter, full custody of my daughter, and ordered my ex out of the house and allowed me to go back in and take care of my daughter. And my daughter was, took a lot of the brunt of that too.
Mm-hmm.
And it was at one point where she said, "I can't do this anymore, Dad. We need to get out of here."
Right.
And like I said, it hit my ears a lot differently. And so we did what we had to do. And the important thing to remember is that many times the abusers have either been a victim themselves,
Correct.
or they had their adult role models show them these things as a child.
As a
And
learned
so
behavior. Correct. Correct.
they're damaged as well.
Correct.
And it's a vicious cycle. And I waited, admittedly, I waited way too long to try and break that cycle. And unfortunately for my daughter, that was the case. And unfortunately for my daughter, she ended up marrying the male version of my ex. And so the only good thing that came from that was that I was able to help her through that and tell her, like, don't waste 2 decades of your life like I did. This guy has shown you his true colors. Believe him and end this thing.
Right. Right.
And I give her all the respect in the world because she did just that.
Right.
After a few years, she put an end to it, and she began raising my grandson all on her own. And that's not an easy thing to do nowadays.
Right.
To
Right.
be a single mom and also trying to fix what somebody else tried to break.
Yeah,
But I
absolutely.
give her so much credit for doing that. And then one of the things that I experienced after my first transplant was my donor, her name was Michelle Stella,
Okay.
and she was beaten at 1 a.m. on September 18th. Well, the first
On my
year
birthday.
when September 18th rolled around, I woke up at 1 a.m. and I had this sheer feeling of terror that I had never felt before in my life.
Hmm.
And I was looking out the windows and I was looking out the front door,
Okay.
and I felt like somebody was coming to kill me. And,
Hmm.
and it was a very frightening experience. And
Wow.
then I didn't sleep that whole night. And then during the day, I just had these feelings like I was going to die.
Hmm.
And it wasn't until later on when I had spoke with her dad, I ended up calling him that afternoon on the 18th. And he said, "How you doing, Mark?" And I said, "Not too good, John. I'm having a real rough day." And I started telling him what was going on. And so he told me, "Well, you know what today is, right? Today's the day that Michelle got beat." And
Hmm.
uh, and then it, it made sense. It made a lot of sense as to why I felt like that, because me and my first donor, we had a lot of connections,
Right.
many, many connections. And then on the second and third year, I woke up at 1 a.m, but it felt like uh, my head got run over by a truck. And I just had this excruciating pain that nothing could stop. And then about 12 hours later, it just stopped. And then by the fourth year, I was already having some health issues again and facing another transplant. And I didn't wake up with that I was scared or in pain, but I woke myself up out of my sleep crying.
Mm.
And
Mm.
and um and I felt like very close to my donor. And
Mm.
every October, I always speak out on domestic violence a little more than I do the rest of the year,
Right. Right.
being that it's the month for awareness, to spread awareness.
Right.
And this is a tragedy that needs to end. This is uh, something where each and every day we all have to do something to try to break this vicious cycle of senseless violence.
Let me
And
let me ask you something more real quick, and pardon the interruption. I mean, you said a lot of great points, and I actually want to address those before I forget. But I guess the question that I have kind of fresh in my mind is this, right? When you speak, right, on domestic violence, and you said like every October you make it a priority to speak on the subject. My question is, when you really talk about from a male perspective, and I'm pretty sure like the reception you may get from a lot of guys is probably like, come on, bro, you serious, man? Like, really? Like, we don't talk about this thing. Like, what are some of the responses, I guess, that you normally get, right, when you're talking about this? Not as far as from the women, right? Because obviously, uh, facts and statistics say more women are affected in children than as opposed to men. But what has your experience been like from getting the responses from the men?
well, it's been a mixed bag.
Okay.
There's been some guys that kind of take on that macho stance and say, "Come on,
Right.
bro,
Right. Right.
it's just a woman that how much could it hurt?" Like, well,
Mm.
when you're getting hit over the back of the head and you don't see it coming with the iron skillet, or you get cracked across your nose with an old school hard plastic phone, it don't matter who's behind it. There's a lot of pain associated with that,
Right.
but there's a lot of things that you get left with after that as well.
Mm.
And I would just explain to them, like, listen, man, you could take that attitude or that stance, but that ain't helping the problem. Now, I say this all the time. As men, we, we have to take some accountability, and we have to teach our sons and our grandsons better.
Correct. Correct.
And
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
we're in that role as the abuser, we need to get some help. And like I said, more often than not, the abuser was somebody who witnessed this or was even uh, abused
Correct.
when they were young.
Correct. Correct.
And so that's why it's this cycle of senseless violence that continues from generation to generation.
And
Maybe a son saw his dad do it and he thinks that's the way it's supposed to be done.
and
Or, you could have been on the other end of it too.
yeah, and that's something that I wanted to hop on point interruption once again is because as being a coach and also as a hypnotherapist practitioner, a lot of times when I'm doing sessions with individuals and we're really getting down to the root cause of things, a lot of times it really does stem from really childhood, right? It really stems from the type of exposure that a person, has been a part of. And what's even more frightening, especially with something like this, and you mentioned that this is like literally a generational curse. It's just like it's just like poverty, right? It's a generational curse. So with that, yeah, I'm in total agreement with you on that, and that's why doing this awareness is so important because it gives people a different perspective, especially during these days and times where we got technology at our fingertips, we got Google, we got Quora, all these other different types of resources that we have our hands on. I do got a question for you, right? If if we had this technology 20 or 30 years ago, per se, right? Do you think that the cases would still be the same or would it be much less if they had tech if like parents or great grandparents or whoever have you had access to the same technology then.
Well,
What's your take on that?
we're kind of dealing with hypotheticals there,
Yeah,
but
I mean, yeah, of
uh,
course.
anytime that you can have access to something that will help you break a cycle or solve a problem, and of course, that's a positive. And I think that uh, now, because there's been so many people raising awareness about it,
Yeah.
and so many good people have been lost,
Right.
uh, that, that things are starting to change, but it's still happening.
Yeah.
And nobody deserves to die like that. Just because they don't want to be with somebody anymore, or they're tired of the abuse, or whatever the case may be.
Okay. Okay.
Nobody deserves to die at the hands of somebody who's professing to love them, somebody who's been put in a position to provide and protect.
Right.
And I'm not just talking husband against wife or wife against husband, because this kind of stuff can happen with parent or step parent against a child, and even sometimes a child against a parent.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, anything that is
Interesting.
within the household can be considered domestic violence.
Right.
And
Right.
I've even known of instances where the elderly get abused by their own family.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh yeah,
And
absolutely.
this stuff, uh, you know, uh, it just needs to stop, because violence is never the answer. And
So
um, and what anybody that's in this situation, and I say this all the time,
okay.
if you're uh, committing a domestic violence on somebody, you're not tough. You're not strong. Uh, I break rocks for a living. Like, if you really think you're that tough, come out to the rock pile with me, and you will find out that you are not tough.
Hey,
Uh,
I see the kind of work you do, man. I'm like, no,
and
bro.
it
Like
takes
I've
no
had.
amount of strength to harm somebody who's weaker than you,
Mm,
somebody that is expecting the total opposite from you, who is expecting love or protection, or you're supposed to be providing for.
right. Right.
And many times, uh, substance abuse is surrounded around domestic violence.
Mm,
Um,
right.
and so it's a myriad of different problems that culminate when these senseless acts of violence occur. And so you can't just attack it one way. Um, you have to look at it from several different angles. And dysfunction doesn't come in one form.
So with that, I'm glad you said that. So what would be some of the causes that would create domestic violence in your opinion or in your experience?
Well, I think that the main cause would be that uh, the abusers have either witnessed it or been a part of it on the
Okay.
other end.
Okay.
And so they think
Right.
that that's normal. I know in my case, uh, uh, my abuser later on, years and years later, admitted to me that that was part of her childhood, and it
Mm-hmm.
was what she witnessed. And and I mean, I would ask her to get help, but many times when you're asking a person to get some help, they tell you nothing's wrong with them, something's wrong with you, and that's the denial and that they're living in.
Just like an
Uh,
alcoholic.
it's very hard to look at yourself introspectively, especially when you've been committing these type of acts.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
it takes a person that's made out of a certain kind of something to realize that they're in the wrong, that they need help, and they need to make some wholesale changes.
So do you think it's
Um,
like pride or ego that comes into play of that as well?
well, I'm sure
Like,
that
man, I'm
that
good.
has something to do with it,
Hmm.
because many times it's said that ego stands for edging God out.
Right,
And if you are prideful in everything, then in the Bible, that is described as a sin, right? And so many times uh, the abusers have removed themselves from their spiritual connection or their spiritual relationships with our with God the Father or their Creator, however they want to look at it.
right.
And um, one thing that the one mistake I made was thinking that if she was yelling at me or calling me out my name or cussing me out, if I did it louder, that it would end. And it really didn't. It just made it worse. And I
Interesting.
was never raised around that. My mom and dad never did that to each other. And so all this was very foreign to me
Right,
when I got into this relationship
right.
and it started happening. And I, I stuck around for my daughter to keep her
Okay,
safe. Uh, um, and I can't even say that that was the right thing to do either,
right,
because she witnessed a lot of things that she never should have. But
right.
we fell asleep most of the time under the same roofs, under the same roof, and I was able to keep her safe and protected because as she got older, um, a lot of that stuff came on her when
Right.
she grew up and got a mind of her own and saw things for what they really were. And if she spoke out against it, then that stuff would turn on her.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
but
Absolutely.
I just, I give my daughter all the credit in the world because she raises my grandson in a manner that is breaking that cycle, that is teaching him it's not okay uh, to do these kind of things.
Absolutely.
And although he's still very young, he's going to be 6 here in a few days. He still knows the concept of not hitting girls, not calling girls names, and that it's wrong. And, uh, you know, we teach our children what's okay, what's acceptable. And, and sometimes if we're doing the wrong things, they might think that that's okay and acceptable, and it isn't. But kids learn from those adults that they're around the most.
Absolutely.
And so
Correct.
when this kind of stuff is happening, even as the abuser, you have to realize, look what we're teaching the ones that are watching. And
Absolutely.
as the one that's being abused, you also are teaching them something, whether you allow it or not. And I got to this point where uh, I lost sight of my value and worth. I started to believe all the things that I was being told about myself. And when I got out of this relationship, it took me a long time to regain that. But
Wow.
when I did, I said to myself, nobody will ever do that again.
That's right.
If somebody's speaking to me a certain way, if they're cussing at me or yelling at me or calling me out my name, or they try and raise a hand to me, they are not my people and they don't
That's right.
belong around
That's
me.
right.
And so I don't tolerate that, nor would I want anyone to tolerate that from me.
Absolutely.
And, and
So, okay, I'm sorry.
so that's how I feel about that one.
Absolutely. Brother Mark, you said a lot here, and I'm just taking a look at the comments, so I do apologize. I was listening to you very intently, man. I mean, this is definitely a very important topic, just like Angela T. Jackson, welcome, welcome. We have here Shakita Lewis, welcome, welcome. She's also part of the Small Business Network movement. This is a very powerful topic. And again, man, I most certainly appreciate you because when I created this series, I knew as far as the sensitivity that it would bring. And I had a feeling that it would probably be more women that would come on board, this podcast to talk about these things. But it's always refreshing, and it's for me, I tell you, I get a joy really having us men come, right, and really talk about this subject because in my experience when it comes to domestic violence, how the way I was raised, right, that didn't necessarily be in my household, but obviously I came from an environment where that was pretty normal, right? It was just pretty much the way of life. And from my experience, I was involved in a domestic violence relationship, and by the grace of God, I was able to get out of that. But I tell you, it was a situation where literally, like, if this individual would have just cut me just one more inch, right, on my wrist, they would have hit an artery vein, and transformation greatness wouldn't have existed. I'm gonna put it to you that way. So this is very near and dear to me. And for all those that's in attendance, by the way, if you are in this space, and we're talking about domestic violence awareness month, right? So if you have been a part of that and you overcame that, or perhaps you may know someone, right? You may know of any nonprofit organizations, any resources that you can give to individuals, right? It would definitely be a blessing. And come on board and let's have a conversation because even though, and I said this before and I'll say it again, even though there's more awareness on this, like mental health and a lot of other things, but yet there's still a lot more work to be done. And especially for us as men, like you mentioned, brother, earlier, just still really getting over that stigma of, man, just toughen up, man. What's wrong with you, bro? Like, come on, man. It's a woman. Are you serious? You for real? We're really having this conversation right now? Like really getting over that because there are men that are in domestic violence abusive relationships, and because they have that same stigma, they still have that um, programming. What's happening is that they're suffering in silence, right? And it's even in many cases that's not reported, they're no longer here, they're dead, right? So that's how I guess with this subject here it's very sensitive, and I guess it really brings a special place in my heart along with being homeless as well. So, brother Mark, let me ask you this, man, because I know it's getting late here. So I guess from a male point of view, for us as men, what can we do, brother? Talk to us, man. What can we do as men, as leaders, as servant leaders, as those that have influence in our respective communities and platforms and different things of that nature? What can we do to bring more awareness on this subject? Talk to us, man.
Well, first and foremost, if you are abusing somebody, stop calling yourself a man
Mm,
because you're a dude or a guy at best, but most of the time you're really just a coward, and even a monster.
mm,
Look at yourself in the mirror and get help, because the person that's being abused isn't the only one that needs help. The person that's abusing also needs help. And it's important to remember that. But if you are raising your hand to a woman, you stop calling yourself a man, first and foremost, because you are not.
mm.
A man, in the truest sense of the word, is somebody who protects his family, not somebody who hurts them out of anger or frustration or because they are abusing substances or
Right,
alcohol.
right.
It's weird that the day that the police get the most domestic violence calls is Super Bowl Sunday, when
Hmm,
there's a lot of drinking going on and there's a lot of,
hmm.
uh, you know, other things going on. And as men, we need to do better in educating our younger men, because it's glorified in the movies, in television, and even in rap music.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
talking about
Totally.
smack-a-hoe and all this other crap. We,
Right.
we need to change that. It's hard to even turn on TV nowadays if you're without seeing women being violated or abused in some manner. And
That's true.
we
That's
need
true.
to change that.
That is
Like
true. You got a point.
that's what people are watching, and that's what's accepted. And
And
now
that's
with
why.
the prevalence of guns, um, it's
Yeah.
it's not just, you know, now somebody who's being abused is thinking my only option is to kill this person to get out of this.
Mm.
And that don't end it.
Right.
That don't end it. It just opens up a whole different set of problems.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
if you are in a situation where you are being abused, whether it be mentally, verbally, emotionally, or physically, uh, you got to get out of there because it's not going to end well. It's only going to get worse. There'll be
Yeah.
apologies, and then it'll be okay for a week or two, and then it'll get worse than before the apology. And so
Mm.
when I say when a person shows you their true colors, uh, don't they don't have to show you 5 or 6 or 10 or 100 times to believe them. Believe them right
That's right.
away.
That's right.
And the thing about giving people chances is if they don't respect you, every time you give them a chance, they get less and less respect for you because they think, well, it doesn't matter. I'll mess up again and they'll give me another chance.
Right. Right.
And
Wow. Wow.
that's 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 how people end up in the
Yeah.
cemetery, by giving chances to the wrong people.
Right.
And you have to find help wherever you have to find it. And it's hard work to stop this stuff. It's hard work to even heal after this stuff happens to you.
Right.
But without healing, and the very healing that you need really feels like pain and it hurts.
Mm.
But without the healing, there is no growth. There's no moving forward. And
Mm.
there is no evolving.
Mm.
And so all of that is very, very important. I know that myself and even my daughter have talked about how much work that we had to put in to get to a better place,
Absolutely. Yes,
because
sir.
of what others had done.
Yes, sir.
Um, and don't be afraid to talk about it. It doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man, and especially if you're a man, because there's somebody out there who's going through the same things you have or the same things that you are going through, and they're waiting to hear your story so they can make a decision on what they're going to do next. And that's why
Correct.
I'm not, listen, I really could care less about what anybody thinks about me for speaking out about this problem. It is a human problem. It is not a male or female problem. It is a problem of humanity, and it happens to both genders. And you can't just swallow it, because I can say this with 100% honesty that I would swallow it, and I would put it to the back of my mind, and I wouldn't deal with it. And then some poor sucker said the wrong thing and caught it all, and maybe didn't even deserve it. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you put stuff like that away and you don't deal with it, it will come out like a bomb. And if
Wow.
more often than not, it comes out on somebody who really doesn't deserve it. They just happen to say the wrong thing at the wrong time. And
Absolutely. Yep.
that doesn't solve anything either, because it just perpetrates more violence,
Right.
and,
Right.
and opens up another road to it. And so uh, looking in your mirror is key, especially if you're on the wrong end of that. Not well,
Mm-hmm.
both ends are wrong for both people,
Right.
but if you're the abuser, you're really on the wrong end, because I mean, I really do believe this, that when you're hurting people that you profess to love, man, it's going to come back on you tenfold. It's, I mean, it really does. And I've seen it happen. And
So I lie. So I
it's
lie.
important, though, to remember that, you know, the Bible tells us to pray for our enemies. And sometimes we have to do that too. And maybe God could touch their heart in a way that will help them change and then help them become a facilitator of more change.
Right,
But
correct.
change needs to happen because people are still dying to senseless acts of violence. And and although the numbers are going down, they're not going down quick enough.
Correct.
And the younger generation, for many reasons, not just the example they're seeing or the things they're involved in, but the things they're exposed to in the media, the music, television, movies, like I said, they're kind of like, you know, this is the way you're supposed to be, or
Mhm.
unconsciously giving them permission to be that way. And that's
Right.
just ridiculous. And that's not the way to go. And I will say it one more time. If you are abusing somebody, you are not tough, you are not strong. And if you are a male and you're doing this, you stop calling yourself a man, because you are the furthest thing from that. Get help for your problem and start working towards being a man again, because it's never
Absolutely.
too late to change. God can bring change to anybody's life, but you got to allow him to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Bro, Mark, this has been very, very enlightening. And I believe that whoever's watching this, either right now or on the replay, or hey, you know what, maybe even a week or who knows, maybe even years down the line, right? I believe that this will really touch someone. And I believe that that individual will be like, you know what? Just listening to this podcast has really made me change, my perspective, or it really given me an opportunity to really go at it differently or find ways to even get in help. And that's the reason why, too, on a side note, ladies and gentlemen, that's the reason why sharing your story and sharing your expertise is so, so important. I said, you know what, I didn't say it so many times, and I'll keep saying it till the cows come home. Having a podcast or having a platform such as TV and radio, if you're a speaker and you have a voice, you have a message, the best thing you can do in 2023 and even beyond is really getting visible and sharing your story, sharing your experience, your strength, your skill sets, the knowledge in which that you have, because you never know how it can impact someone. I have a saying here, and Dr. James knows this very perfectly, and I say it all the time. If one person I can touch, Lord knows, if it's just one person, at least one person, then you know something, I have done my job. And you know what? I don't say that because it sounds good or if it's cliche. That's the God honest truth. And it's my firm belief and conviction that someone is going to benefit from this talk tonight. Brother Mark, what else is going on in your world? What can the listener audience expect from you? Because you are doing a lot, my friend.
Well, I yesterday was a long day for me. I did 6 1-hour talks back to back to back to back to back to back
Get it, man.
at a
That's what I'm talking
local
about.
at a high school about 30 minutes from where I live.
That's what I'm talking about.
Um, Last Wednesday night, I spoke to a football team from that same high school, Espanola Valley High School, and also a church youth group. There was about 100 kids in the room.
Nice.
Um, Tomorrow night, I will be speaking to another high school football team uh, at Powake High School. That's about 20 minutes from where I live.
Okay.
And I am currently getting involved with the youth group at my church at the Light at Mission Viejo. And I'll be traveling to Dallas with that youth group uh, in November. And
Okay.
then in December, I'm going to be going down to Las Vegas, Nevada for what's called the Rainmaker Summit with Bill Walsh. And I
Mm.
am just recently been asked to join the team, Shawn Fair's team at the Leadership Experience Tour, and
Yes, sir.
become part of the team. So
Congratulations
I've been
on that.
working hard on trying to find more talent and more speakers for our March show, which you will be a part of. I'm looking
Congratulations.
forward
Yes,
to
sir.
that. Yes,
Yes,
I
sir.
am.
Yes, sir.
And still training with Dr. Tabitha Russell and Shawn Fair, and just trying to get my message out there of uh, you got to be resilient to persevere. You got to be persistent to persevere. And you have to love your life enough that you'll never quit and it will never be an option. And you have to be a warrior in life. Um, but I'm not talking about, when I talk about being a warrior and fighting, I'm not talking about throwing hands or choking
Right.
somebody out or
Right.
guns and knives or that kind of thing. My tools in my battle are my heart and my mind, my words, the actions that I put behind those words,
Mhm.
and the example that I set in being a leader, a servant leader, and just uh, also trying my very, very best, or not trying, because there is no try, there's only do. I am
Correct.
doing my absolute best to align myself with God's purpose for my life and fully trusting Him with everything and allowing God to be uh, my schedule maker and appointment setter.
Gotcha.
And it just allowing God to lead me to the events that He wants me to speak at. And when I get there, trusting Him to give me the words that He wants the people to hear,
That's
not
right.
necessarily the ones that I want to say.
Correct. Right on.
And
Right
every
on.
day, just trying to get closer to the Lord. Uh, and these are some crazy times that we're living in. And
Absolutely.
we have to do our best to not just help ourselves, we have to help our fellow man.
Correct.
And that's why I go around telling my story. And that's why I'm not ashamed to tell my stories about domestic violence either. I've made my mistakes as well. Um, I've made some bad choices in life, but the only way I got out of those and became better from that was looking in the mirror, owning it, making it right, and learning from it.
That's
See,
it.
the measure of a man is not by his mistakes or bad choices. The measure of the man is what he does after those mistakes or bad choices. Does he own it, fix it, and learn from it? Or is he pointing fingers at somebody else, blaming somebody else, making excuses, wallowing in self pity or complaining? And that
Right.
is the measure of the man.
Wow. 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 That's what I'm talking about, ladies and gentlemen. That's what I'm talking about. Brother Mark, how can others get a hold of you, my friend?
Well, you can go to my website, thelungtransplantStonemason.com. And I'm also on social media, on Instagram and TikTok under the Lung Transplant Stonemason, and on Facebook and LinkedIn with my name, Mark Rodriguez from Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I'm easy to find on Facebook. You'll find my logo right here.
Mm,
And
awesome.
I I am getting ready to unveil my coaching program, a transformational empowerment coaching program, and uh, it's geared towards men, but it's open to everybody, um, and men of all kinds of issues. Uh, I don't talk about I don't talk about things I haven't experienced. I don't talk about things I don't know about, and I
Right.
don't talk about fixing things that I have not been guilty of
Right.
uh, doing
Right.
myself. And so, you know, one of the hardest things for anybody to do, male or female, is to look in the mirror and be honest with what they see. And one of the hardest things to do in life is to look at yourself introspectively and then hold yourself accountable for what it is that you find.
Very
And
true.
then move towards a place of correcting those behaviors or those patterns or those habits, and finding the flip side to that. To every negative thing in our lives, there is a positive side on the flip side, but it takes a lot of courage to get there and a
And
lot
I think
of
also
work.
too, I think also too that, and one of the things in which I had to learn is that we all have pitfalls, right? We all have shortcomings. I know that the great Les Brown, he has a saying that life be lifing, right? Which is very true. It happens to all of us. No one is immune to it. The key is, and this is what I'm discovering in my 46 years of living, which I'm still young, right? But what I'm discovering is that the key is sticking around long enough and staying in the battle long enough to really see that victory. That's what I'm really noticing, right? And I just truly believe that a lot of people, they just give up way too quickly. There's a saying like at the 1 yard line, people just give up. But the key is if you can just hold on, right? Just a little bit more. You're at the 1 yard line. And just a little bit more, one more yard, you can score that touchdown, right? You can see that victory. Things start turning around. It may not be rapid all the time, right? It may not be like instant poof. It may be very subtle, but the key is to sticking around long enough. And I just believe that the amount of time that we have on the space of this planet, we're all have an obligation and responsibility. And my audience heard me say this many, many times. We all have an obligation and responsibility to do something with our gifts and talents. And it's not just to serve, you know, us, right? Self. It's to serve others. So, Brother Mark, I thank you so much. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. You wanted to add something?
That's right. That's right, Shawn. Um, in life, it's hard to fight, but it's important to remember that nothing good comes to you that comes easy. You have to put in a lot of hard work.
Absolutely.
And the only time that you truly lose in life is when you quit.
I
Rest of
agree.
the time, you're just learning or pivoting or finding a new road to the place that you're supposed to be at.
Agreed.
And warriors always win because warriors always fight. And if you stay away from the tools of the weak, were the ones that I mentioned before, uh, making excuses, blaming others, wallowing in self pity and complaining, you will never have to worry about uh, shrouding yourself in those tools of the weak and taking on the face of a coward by quitting. Quitting should never be an option in one's life. Retreating, surrendering, all those things. Like, life's tough, and it's important to remember that tough times don't last, but tough and faithful people do. And when you're faced with something big and serious, sometimes you just got to dig your 10 toes down in the ground and face it and fight it,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
quitting and running is never the answer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Man, man, man. I feel like we can really talk for hours, man. We're probably gonna have to do like maybe another segment on this. But I thank you so much, my brother, for really coming on here and really, sharing this time with us. And ladies and gentlemen, like I mentioned before, and I'll say it again before we close, if this resonates with you, if what Brother Mark mentioned, and you may know someone, maybe, hey, even yourself, right? You don't have to comment on here. Trust me, I totally get it. Reach out to Brother Mark and really have a conversation. And I've realized a lot of times when I've done that in the past on certain things, that's where true transformation and a lot of great insights came out at. So if that's you, by all means, please feel free to get in contact with Bro Mark Rodriguez. Hit him up on his messenger, reach out to him on social media handles, and definitely, I believe as far as that, you would gain something out of it. Also, as well, ladies and gentlemen, if you're interested in TV and radio, and you would love to have your own channel built for you, by all means, let's go ahead and have a conversation to see as far as what that looks like. If you'd like to be a future guest as far as on this particular podcast, I'm planning as far as for next month to do a different theme. I just don't know what it is, but if it resonates with you, by all means, please feel free to reach out to me. And we got many other goodies and surprises in store. And for you guys that know me, you know I'm a part of a lot of different things. I wear a lot of many different hats, but it's all a blessing nevertheless. So until then, family, on behalf of Transformation Greatness, along with the Small Business Network podcast, I want to just say thank you once again to my fellow brother in the speaking world, man, brother Mark Rodriguez, powerful, powerful speaker, man. And we're going to end this segment like basically do all our others here. And if what we stated on here either motivated, transformed, or inspired at least one person, then may God be the glory, and we take no credit for absolutely none of it. And until then, y'all all been amazing. Thank you so much for your time. And until the next episode, peace and love, family. Thank you for your time. Have
Thank
a
you,
good
sir.
night, everyone. Absolutely, sir. Good night.